Jae-sung walked quickly down the gleaming white hallway of the Galactic Council space station. He was a human diplomat, and today was an important day. A new alien species called the Zephyrians were arriving for their first official visit. Jae-sung entered the large reception room. It had high ceilings and huge windows looking out at the stars. Several other human diplomats and staff were already there, talking quietly. "Ah, Jae-sung, there you are," said a tall man, walking over. It was his boss, Director Kwon. "Are you ready for our guests?" Jae-sung nodded. "Yes, sir. I've reviewed their cultural information and language basics. Fascinating species." Just then, a chime sounded. "Attention," a computerized voice announced. "Zephyrian delegation shuttle docking at Bay 12. Everyone stopped talking and lined up to welcome the aliens. Jae-sung straightened his blue uniform jacket and stood up tall. With a hiss of air, the door slid open. 3 aliens walked in. They were taller than humans, with long limbs and smooth gray skin. Their large black eyes blinked in the bright light. The one in front stepped forward. "Greetings," it said, its voice deep and resonant. "I am Ambassador Calrin of planet Zephyria. We are honored to be here." Director Kwon stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome, Ambassador Calrin. I am Director Kwon, head of the human delegation. We are pleased to have you join the Galactic Council." The alien bowed its head in return. Then it turned slightly and gestured to Jae-sung. "And this is Jae-sung Lee, one of our top diplomats," Director Kwon said. "He will be your main guide and liaison during your visit." Jae-sung bowed deeply to the tall alien. "It is an honor to meet you, Ambassador. I look forward to learning about your fascinating culture." Calrin made a pleased humming sound. "The honor is ours. We have heard much about the resourceful and adaptable species called humans. We are eager to see how your kind lives." "Then please, allow me to show you around," Jae-sung said with a smile. He gestured toward the door. "Right this way." The group walked out into the hallway, the Zephyrians having to duck their heads slightly to fit through the doorframe. Jae-sung led them to an observation area that looked out over the interior of the space station. "As you can see, the station is like a small, self-contained city," Jae-sung explained, pointing out various areas. "It has everything we need for the many species that live and work here. Accommodations, meeting areas, recreational facilities, and of course, cafeterias with food from dozens of worlds." Calrin looked impressed. "Your species has done well to create such a place for interstellar diplomacy and trade. Zephyria tends to be more insular. This is all rather new to us." Jae-sung nodded. "Every species adapts to space travel and interaction in their own ways. But the Galactic Council provides a neutral ground for us to connect and learn from each other. And food is one of the great universal connectors," he added with a laugh. "Ah yes, we have heard of the diversity of human cuisine," Calrin said. "Our digestive systems can process many types of organic matter. We look forward to trying these foods of yours." Jae-sung grinned. "Then let me show you to the main human cafeteria. It's almost midday mealtime." He led the delegation to a large, busy room. Wonderful smells wafted from the kitchen area. Humans and aliens sat at long tables, eating and talking. As Jae-sung started to explain the various food options, he noticed Calrin staring intently at a group of humans eating something flat and triangular. A stretchy, gooey substance clung to the wedges as they lifted them. "Ah, that is pizza, a favorite human food," Jae-sung said. "The stretchy part is called cheese. It's made from the milk of certain earth animals." Calrin's eyes widened. It stretched out a long gray finger toward the cheese-filled pizza. "May we try some of this cheese?" it asked, its deep voice filled with a new intensity. Jae-sung smiled, not realizing this moment would change the course of galactic history. "Of course. Let's get some pizza for you to sample." Ambassador Calrin and the other Zephyrians followed Jae-sung curiously as he led them to the cafeteria line. The human picked up a tray and handed it to Calrin. "Here, you can select whatever foods you'd like to try," Jae-sung explained. "The pizza is over there." He pointed to a large round tray filled with triangular slices covered in red sauce, melted cheese, and various toppings. Calrin took the tray and followed Jae-sung's example, sliding it along the metal counter. When they reached the pizza, Calrin carefully placed a slice on the tray, watching in fascination as the cheese stretched and oozed. They found an empty table and sat down. Jae-sung showed Calrin how to eat the pizza by picking up a slice by the crust. The Zephyrian copied the motion, long gray fingers wrapping around the warm bread. As Calrin bit into the slice, its eyes widened in surprise. The flavor was unlike anything it had experienced before. The tangy sauce, the rich cheese, the crispy yet doughy crust. But what really stood out was the texture of the cheese, soft and gooey, stretching out in long, elastic strings. "This cheese," Calrin said after swallowing. "It is extraordinary. What is it made of?" Jae-sung smiled, pleased that the alien enjoyed the food. "Cheese is made from the milk of certain earth animals, most commonly cows. The milk is treated with specific bacteria and enzymes to make it coagulate and solidify. There are many different types of cheese with varying flavors and textures." Calrin took another bite, savoring the stretch of the mozzarella. "Fascinating. We have nothing quite like this on Zephyria." The other Zephyrians tried the pizza as well, each one marveling at the unique sensory experience of the cheese. They asked Jae-sung many questions about how it was made and what other foods utilized this strange yet captivating substance. Jae-sung did his best to answer, explaining about the different categories of cheese and some of the most popular varieties. He told them about cheeseburgers, mac and cheese, grilled cheese sandwiches, and cheese plates served with wine. Calrin listened intently, a look of wonder and fascination on its usually stoic face. "We must bring some of this cheese back to Zephyria to study," it declared. "Such a substance could revolutionize our culinary industry." Jae-sung chuckled, imagining the tall gray aliens excitedly serving cheese platters at their diplomatic functions. "I'm sure we could arrange a trade agreement. Cheese for some of your advanced propulsion technology, perhaps." Calrin nodded eagerly. "Yes, yes. We must discuss this further with your trade representatives." It looked down at its empty plate, then back up at Jae-sung. "But first, may we have some more of this pizza?" Jae-sung grinned and stood up. "Of course. Let me introduce you to another human favorite, the all-you-can-eat buffet." As the Zephyrians delightedly loaded up new plates with more pizza and other cheese-filled dishes, Jae-sung couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Here he was, a humble diplomat, fostering interstellar relations through the power of food. He had no way of knowing the far-reaching consequences this simple meal would have, that the Zephyrians' fascination with cheese would soon turn into an obsession. That demand for the coveted substance C would skyrocket, causing economic and social upheaval on Earth. For now, Jae-sung just enjoyed the moment, watching the aliens delight in the stretchy, gooey wonders of cheese. The troubles could wait for another day. Today was about pizza diplomacy and the power of a good meal to bring different species together. News of the delicious and unique substance C spread quickly through the alien delegations on the Galactic Council space station. The Zephyrians shared their discovery with the other species, offering them samples of the various cheeses they had acquired from the human cafeteria. Soon, aliens from all over the galaxy were clamoring to try this strange new food. They marveled at the wide array of flavors and textures, from sharp and crumbly cheddar to smooth and creamy brie. The stretchy, melted quality of mozzarella on pizza became a particular favorite. As demand for cheese grew, the human cafeteria struggled to keep up. The kitchen staff worked around the clock to produce more pizzas, cheeseburgers, and cheese plates, but it was never enough. Aliens began offering to trade valuable resources from their homeworlds for just a small portion of the coveted cheese. Jae-sung watched in amazement as the once orderly cafeteria descended into chaos. Aliens pushed and shoved to get to the front of the cheese line, sometimes even coming to blows over the last slice of pizza. The human diplomats tried to maintain order, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer number of cheese-crazed aliens. Back on Earth, the sudden surge in demand for cheese caused major disruptions. Prices for milk and cheese skyrocketed as suppliers struggled to keep up with the orders pouring in from the space station. Dairy farmers worked overtime to increase production, but it was still not enough. In the meantime, the aliens grew increasingly desperate for their cheese fix. Some began bribing human workers on the space station to smuggle them extra portions. Others attempted to break into the cafeteria storerooms to steal wheels of cheese. Jae-sung knew something had to be done before the situation spiraled out of control. He called an emergency meeting with the other human diplomats to discuss the issue. "We can't keep going on like this," he said grimly. "The aliens' obsession with cheese is causing major problems, both here and back on Earth." Director Kwon nodded in agreement. "We need to find a way to control the distribution of cheese before things get any worse." They debated various options, from rationing the cheese to cutting off the supply altogether. But they knew any drastic measures would likely lead to an alien uprising. As they deliberated, a message came in from Earth. It was from Min Seo, a human scientist who had been studying the effects of cheese on alien biology. Her findings were alarming. The unique combination of fats, proteins, and casein in cheese appears to have a drug-like effect on the alien digestive system, she reported. It causes a massive release of dopamine, leading to feelings of euphoria and addiction. Long-term consumption can cause erratic behavior and aggression. Jae-sung felt a sinking feeling in his stomach as he listened to Min Seo's report. They weren't just dealing with a craze for a new food. They were facing a potential alien drug epidemic. He knew they would have to take drastic action to prevent the situation from escalating further. But how could they wean the aliens off their cheese addiction without causing an interstellar incident? As Jae-sung pondered this question, an alert sounded on his communicator. There had been another incident in the cafeteria. A group of Zephyrians, high on cheese, had started a brawl over the last container of Parmesan. Jae-sung sighed and stood up to head to the cafeteria, wondering how he was going to clean up this cheesy mess. Little did he know, the worst was yet to come. As the demand for cheese continued to grow among the alien population on the Galactic Council space station, the situation began to take a toll on both the human crew and the station itself. Jae-sung and his fellow diplomats worked tirelessly to keep the peace, but it seemed that every day brought a new challenge related to the aliens' insatiable appetite for cheese. The scientific community on Earth scrambled to study the effects of cheese on alien physiology, hoping to find a way to mitigate the negative consequences. Min Seo, a brilliant young researcher, led the charge, analyzing samples and data sent back from the space station. What she discovered was alarming. The unique combination of fats, proteins, and casein in cheese seemed to have a powerful effect on the aliens' brains, triggering the release of massive amounts of dopamine. This led to feelings of euphoria and pleasure, but also had a dark side. As the aliens consumed more and more cheese, their behavior became increasingly erratic and aggressive. Minor disagreements that would have once been resolved through diplomacy now often devolved into physical altercations. The space station's security team found itself breaking up more and more fights, many of them centered around access to cheese. Even more concerning were the reports of aliens experiencing withdrawal symptoms when they couldn't get their hands on cheese. They became irritable, anxious, and in some cases, even violent. Jae-sung and his team realized that what had started as a culinary curiosity had now become a full-blown addiction crisis. To make matters worse, the constant demand for cheese was putting a strain on the station's resources. The kitchen staff was working around the clock to keep up with the demand, and supplies were running low. The humans were forced to start rationing cheese, which only led to more unrest among the alien population. Back on Earth, the economic impact of the cheese crisis was starting to be felt. Dairy farmers were working overtime to keep up with the demand, and prices for milk and cheese had skyrocketed. Some countries even began to experience shortages as more and more of their dairy production was diverted to the space station. As tensions continued to mount, a series of diplomatic incidents rocked the station. In one particularly egregious case, a high-ranking Zephyrian diplomat was caught trying to break into the station's cheese storage facility. When confronted by security, the diplomat became violent, injuring several officers before being subdued. Jae-sung knew that something had to be done before the situation spiraled completely out of control. He called an emergency meeting of the station's leadership to discuss their options. It was clear that they needed to take drastic action, but what could they do? Some suggested cutting off the cheese supply completely, but Jae-sung knew that would likely lead to riots and maybe even an armed insurrection. Others proposed trying to find a way to wean the aliens off cheese gradually, but that would take time, and there was no guarantee it would work. As the debate raged on, Jae-sung couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The cheese crisis had already caused so much damage, both on the station and back on Earth. If they didn't find a solution soon, the consequences could be catastrophic. He thought back to that first day when Ambassador Rin had tried pizza for the first time. How could something as simple as a slice of cheese have led to all of this? As he looked out at the stars through the station's observation deck, Jae-sung couldn't help but wonder if humanity's first contact with alien life would be remembered not for the exchange of knowledge and culture, but for the day they introduced them to the addictive power of cheese. The situation on the Galactic Council space station had reached a critical point. The aliens' addiction to cheese was causing unprecedented levels of chaos and disruption, and the human leadership knew that they had to take decisive action before it was too late. Yeonji, the newly appointed head of the Human Council, called an emergency meeting to address the crisis. She gathered all of the top human officials on the station, including Jae-sung and Director Kwon, to discuss their options. "We cannot allow this situation to continue," Yeonji said, her voice filled with determination. "The cheese addiction is not only causing problems here on the station, but it's also having a severe impact on Earth. We have to find a way to stop it." The room was silent for a moment as everyone contemplated the gravity of the situation. Finally, Director Kwon spoke up. "We've been analyzing the data from Min Seo's research," he said, referring to the scientist who had been studying the effects of cheese on alien physiology. "Based on her findings, we believe that the only way to truly solve this problem is to cut off the aliens' access to cheese entirely." There were murmurs of concern around the room. Everyone knew that such a drastic step would likely lead to significant backlash from the alien population. "I understand your hesitation," Yeonji said, addressing the group, "but we have to consider the long-term consequences of allowing this addiction to continue unchecked. It's not just about maintaining order on the station anymore. It's about protecting the well-being of both our own people and the alien species we've come into contact with." After much discussion and debate, the Council ultimately decided that they had no choice but to implement a complete ban on the sale and distribution of cheese to alien species. They knew it would be a difficult and unpopular decision, but they also knew that it was necessary. To enforce the ban, Yeonji tasked Jae-sung with leading a special task force charged with confiscating all remaining cheese supplies on the station and ensuring that no more could be smuggled in. It was a daunting task, but Jae-sung was determined to see it through. Over the next several days, Jae-sung and his team worked tirelessly to locate and seize every last ounce of cheese on the station. They raided storerooms, intercepted shipments, and even conducted surprise inspections of alien quarters. At first, the aliens were outraged by the sudden crackdown. Many of them tried to resist, hiding their cheese supplies, or even attacking the human officers who came to confiscate them. But as the effects of withdrawal began to set in, their anger gradually gave way to desperation. Jae-sung couldn't help but feel a sense of pity as he watched the once proud alien ambassadors reduced to begging and pleading for just one more taste of cheese. He knew that they were suffering, but he also knew that this was the only way to break the cycle of addiction that had taken hold of them. As the days turned into weeks, the situation on the station slowly began to stabilize. The aliens, though still struggling with the effects of withdrawal, were no longer causing the same level of disruption and chaos as before. But Jae-sung knew that their work was far from over. The ban on cheese had stopped the immediate crisis, but it didn't address the underlying issue of the aliens' addiction. They needed to find a way to help the aliens overcome their dependence on cheese, or else the problem would simply resurface in the future. As he looked out at the stars from his office window, Jae-sung couldn't help but wonder what challenges lay ahead. The cheese crisis had tested the limits of human ingenuity and resourcefulness, and he knew that they would need every ounce of both to navigate the difficult road ahead. But for now, at least, they had taken the first step towards a solution. And that was enough to give him hope. The ban on cheese distribution to alien species had been in effect for several weeks, and the initial chaos on the Galactic Council space station had begun to subside. However, as Jae-sung and the other human officials soon discovered, the challenges posed by the aliens' addiction were far from over. Reports began to surface of alien individuals experiencing severe withdrawal symptoms in the absence of their regular cheese consumption. Many exhibited signs of irritability, anxiety, and depression, while others complained of physical symptoms such as headaches and digestive issues. Some even became aggressive, lashing out at their fellow aliens or the human crew in their desperation for cheese. The situation was particularly concerning in the case of the Zephyrians, who had been among the first to discover and embrace the human delicacy. Ambassador Kalrin, once a model of composure and diplomacy, had become a shadow of its former self, pacing restlessly in its quarters and muttering incoherently about the lost treasure of cheese. Jae-sung and his team found themselves on high alert, working around the clock to maintain order on the station and prevent any further escalation of violence. They increased security patrols, particularly around the areas where cheese had once been stored and distributed, and kept a close eye on any alien individuals exhibiting signs of withdrawal. Despite their best efforts, however, the situation continued to deteriorate. There were several instances of aliens attempting to break into secure areas of the station, apparently in search of hidden caches of cheese. In one particularly alarming incident, a group of Zephyrians managed to overpower a human security team and gain access to a restricted storage facility, only to find that it had already been emptied of any cheese supplies. The human leadership on the station knew that they needed to find a more sustainable solution to the problem. While the cheese ban had been necessary to halt the spread of addiction, it was clear that simply cutting off the supply was not enough. They needed to address the root causes of the issue and find a way to help the affected aliens overcome their dependence on cheese. To that end, Yunji, the head of the Human Council, authorized the creation of a special task force dedicated to researching potential treatments for cheese addiction. The team, led by Min Seo, the scientist who had first identified the addictive properties of cheese in aliens, began to work tirelessly to develop a safe and effective way to wean the affected individuals off of their cheese dependence. At the same time, Jae-sung and his colleagues redoubled their efforts to maintain peace and stability on the station. They worked to improve communication with the alien ambassadors and their staff, providing regular updates on the progress of the research team and offering support and resources to those struggling with withdrawal. It was a difficult and often thankless task, but Jae-sung and the others knew that they had no choice but to see it through. The future of the Galactic Council, and indeed the future of peaceful relations between humanity and the other species of the galaxy, depended on their ability to find a solution to this crisis. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Jae-sung couldn't help but reflect on the strange twists of fate that had brought them to this point. What had begun as a simple cultural exchange, a sharing of culinary delights between species, had morphed into a crisis that threatened the very fabric of their society. And yet, even in the midst of this chaos, he found himself marveling at the resilience and adaptability of both the humans and aliens he worked with every day. They had come so far, and they still had so far to go. But with each passing day, each small victory and setback, Jae-sung grew more certain that they would find a way to overcome this challenge, just as they had overcome so many others before. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but one thing was clear: the humans and aliens of the Galactic Council would face it together, united in their determination to build a better future for all. As the withdrawal crisis on the Galactic Council space station continued to escalate, the pressure on the human leadership to find a solution grew more intense with each passing day. Jae-sung and his colleagues knew that they were in a race against time, and that the future of the fragile peace between humanity and the alien species hung in the balance. At the forefront of the search for a solution was Min Seo, the brilliant young scientist who had first identified the addictive properties of cheese in alien physiology. Working tirelessly in her lab, Min Seo and her team analyzed countless samples and ran innumerable tests, searching for a way to counteract the powerful effects of cheese on the alien brain. Progress was slow at first, with many false starts and dead ends. But as the weeks passed, Min Seo began to make breakthroughs. She discovered that certain compounds found in alien plant life seemed to have a mitigating effect on the cheese addiction, reducing the severity of withdrawal symptoms and helping to curb cravings. Excited by this discovery, Min Seo worked with Jae-sung and the other human officials to develop a plan for distributing these compounds to the affected aliens. They worked with the alien ambassadors to identify the most promising plant species from each of their homeworlds and began to cultivate them in specially designed greenhouses on the station. At the same time, Min Seo and her team continued to refine their understanding of the cheese addiction and its effects on alien physiology. They discovered that the addictive properties of cheese were linked to a specific protein found in mammalian milk, and that by carefully manipulating this protein, they could create a synthetic cheese substitute that provided the same pleasurable sensations without the harmful side effects. Armed with this knowledge, Min Seo and Jae-sung approached the alien leaders with a proposal. They offered to share the technology for producing the cheese substitute with the alien species in exchange for their cooperation in distributing the plant-based treatment to their affected populations. The negotiations were tense at first, with many of the alien leaders skeptical of the human proposal. But as the evidence of the effectiveness of Min Seo's treatments began to mount, and as the toll of the cheese addiction on their populations became increasingly clear, the alien leaders began to come around. In the end, a deal was struck. The human scientists would work with their alien counterparts to refine and mass-produce the cheese substitute, while the alien leaders would take responsibility for distributing the plant-based treatment to their people. It was a massive undertaking, requiring unprecedented levels of cooperation and coordination between the various species. But as the weeks passed and the treatment began to take effect, the results were undeniable. The incidents of violence and unrest on the station began to decline, and the aliens who had been struggling with withdrawal began to show signs of improvement. The atmosphere on the station began to change, with a new sense of hope and optimism taking hold. For Jae-sung, watching this transformation was a powerful reminder of why he had chosen this path in the first place. He had always believed in the power of diplomacy and cooperation to overcome even the most daunting challenges, and now he was seeing that belief vindicated in the most incredible way imaginable. As he looked out at the stars from his office window, Jae-sung felt a sense of pride and accomplishment that he had never known before. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, but he knew that they had taken a crucial first step towards building a better future for all the species of the galaxy. And he knew that none of it would have been possible without the incredible work of Min Seo and her team, and the willingness of the alien leaders to put aside their differences and work together for the common good. It was a powerful reminder of what could be achieved when individuals from different backgrounds and cultures came together in the spirit of cooperation and understanding. As Jae-sung turned back to his desk, he couldn't help but smile. The future was bright, and he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united in their determination to build a galaxy of peace and prosperity for all. The successful implementation of the cheese substitute and plant-based treatment marked a turning point in the relations between humans and the various alien species of the Galactic Council. As the affected alien populations began to recover from the throes of cheese addiction, a new sense of trust and cooperation began to emerge. Ambassador Calrin, who had been one of the most severely affected by the addiction, emerged as a powerful advocate for the new era of interspecies cooperation. In a moving speech before the Galactic Council, Calrin praised the efforts of the human scientists and leaders who had worked so tirelessly to find a solution to the crisis. "We owe a great debt to our human friends," Calrin said, its voice strong and clear. "In our moment of greatest need, they did not turn away from us. Instead, they worked tirelessly to find a way to help us overcome this terrible affliction. They have shown us the true meaning of compassion and cooperation." Calrin's words struck a chord with the other alien leaders, and soon a new spirit of collaboration began to take hold. Trade agreements were renegotiated, scientific partnerships were forged, and cultural exchanges became more frequent and more meaningful. For Jae-sung, watching this transformation was a source of great pride and satisfaction. He had always believed in the power of diplomacy to bring people together, and now he was seeing that belief realized on a scale he had never dared to imagine. As the weeks turned into months, the cheese substitute became a popular commodity across the galaxy. The human scientists worked closely with their alien counterparts to adapt the formula to suit the unique tastes and preferences of each species, and soon a thriving interstellar trade in the substance had emerged. But even as the economic benefits of the cheese substitute began to be felt, Jae-sung knew that the true value of the crisis lay in the lessons it had taught them. The cheese addiction had shown them the dangers of unchecked consumption and the importance of considering the unintended consequences of their actions. It had also shown them the incredible power of cooperation and understanding. By working together across the boundaries of species and culture, they had been able to overcome a challenge that had threatened to tear them apart. As Jae-sung prepared to step down from his role as a diplomat and return to Earth, he couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey he had been on. From that first fateful meeting with Ambassador Calrin to the signing of the historic trade agreements that had followed, he had been privileged to witness a transformation that would be remembered for generations to come. And he knew that none of it would have been possible without the hard work and dedication of people like Min Seo, who had poured their hearts and souls into finding a solution to the crisis. They were the true heroes of this story, and Jae-sung knew that he would always be grateful for their efforts. As he boarded the shuttle that would take him back to Earth, Jae-sung took one last look out at the stars. He knew that the future held many more challenges and opportunities, but he also knew that they would face them together, united in their commitment to building a better future for all. And as the shuttle lifted off and began its journey back to Earth, Jae-sung couldn't help but smile. The galaxy was a big and wondrous place, full of incredible diversity and potential. And he knew that as long as there were people like Min Seo and Calrin and all the others who had worked so hard to make this moment possible, there was no limit to what they could achieve. It had all started with a simple block of cheese, but it had ended with something much greater, a new era of peace, prosperity, and understanding that would endure for generations to come. And for that, Jae-sung knew they could all be truly grateful.